Hello, welcome to another screencast for Reach the Skills 1. In this screencast I will explain exactly how you deal with a question that has multiple answer possibilities. So basically a list question. We will turn this into something that is known as a multiple response set in SPSS. First off, let's look at data that corresponds to a list question. I've created an example of a questionnaire question about coffee. So I've asked people, what coffee do you drink? And they could select from multiple options. They could say, I drink espressos, I drink ristrettos, I drink cappuccinos, macchiatos, or lungos. And they could just select one of them, or they could select all 5, or just 3 out of 5. You see the results here. So what happens is if somebody gives a single option, that is presented. If he gives multiple options, they're separated by a comma. If you put it like this in SPSS, it cannot recognize it, cannot work with it. All of the combinations are furthermore difficult to code into separate values, because then there are a lot of combinations. You don't want to give that each unique combination a unique number. So what you need to do is create multiple variables out of a single variable. And we can do that by selecting the data, and then in Excel, in the ribbon, you go to Data, and you press the Text to Columns button. Then you get this wizard that helps you. In this case, we have values that are delimited by a comma. So delimited is good. We need to select this. You can see that it draws bars where it's going to separate these values. So I see that they're in the correct spot where I like them. So press next, and this is fine. So now you see that everything has been split. Let me just get rid of this. So all the answers that were separated by commas that are no longer separated by commas, but instead are now in separate columns. So what happens now? Now I know there are 5 options for the coffee. So I'm going to create 5 new headers. It's macchiato and ristretto. So these are all the headers. I'm just going to quickly give them a clear identifier so that I know that they're headers. What I need to do now is to make sure that everything is in its proper place. So all instances of ristretto should be in the ristretto column. All instances of macchiato should be in this column. Same goes for cappuccino, espresso, and lungo. So let's hunt for some ristrettos. Let's put them over there. Smart move is to cut and then paste. So that's Control X, Control V, not Control C, Control V, Control X, Control V. That way you won't make any mistakes. Let's move the macchiato over there. Here's another lost ristretto. Here's another macchiato. Here's a ristretto. Here's a macchiato. And yes, this is tedious work. It takes a lot of effort, but it's worth it in the long run. Here's another macchiato. Here are a couple of ristrettos. So here we just have lungos. Here we just have espressos, just cappuccinos, just macchiatos, just ristrettos. All right. Now, let's get rid of this column. And let's start replacing everything with numbers. So lungos are going to be A1. And here's the weird bit. Espressos are also going to be a 1. Cappuccinos. Yep. Cappuccinos are also going to be a 1. Macchiatos also a 1. And then ristretto, also a 1. Why are we doing this? Well, let me explain. We first started out with a box that contained 5 instances of coffee. So there's one person that drinks all 5 types of coffee. We've split everything into separate columns, and by doing that we basically asked not one question, but we ask 5 questions. 5 times we ask, do you drink this particular coffee? So do you drink lungo? Yes or no? Do you drink espresso? Yes or no? Do you drink ristretto? Yes or no? Etc, etc. We've coded all these yeses as ones. What we're going to do with the empty spaces, we're going to code those as 2s. We can do that simply by selecting a couple of cells, then pressing 2, and instead of enter, we press Ctrl Enter. So we enter all these 2s at the same time. That goes a little bit faster than just typing them. I did say a little bit, not much. So here's another block. There's another block. Well, let's pretend the data set ends at 20. So, right now, for all the different types of coffee, we have yeses and nos. We copy this data, we paste it into SPSS. Then here, we make sure we have the proper names for each coffee. Make sure you keep a log of what you're doing, so that you remember that, first of all, 1s are yeses and 2s are nos, but also that variable 1 was a lungo, variable 5 was a ristretto, and stuff in between. I think this was an espresso. This was a cappuccino. And this is a macchiato. We can copy, paste these values because they're all the same. They're all nominal. There we go. So here we have data for all the participants in this tiny example data set. Asking the question, do you drink lungo? Yes or no. In order for SPSS to be able to analyze this as a whole, we need to create a multiple response set. So yes, we've separated it, but only so that SPSS can recognize it as being part of a larger thing. We're now going to tell SPSS what that larger thing is. You can do that by going to Analyze and then Multiple Response and then Define Set. We put all these in the set. We are interested in the yeses, so those are the ones. We're going to name this set coffee. We can add a label if you want, like what coffee do you drink? And then press add. You see this $sign coffee. We have now created a multiple response set. SPSS now knows it has to analyze these 5 variables together. You do that by going to the same menu and then going to frequencies. You put in your multiple response set, you press OK. Here you get the frequency table for your multiple response set. So the question was, what coffee do you drink? 13 people said ordinary coffee. 8 said espresso, 7 said cappuccino, etc., etc. Here you see the percentages. You see 2 percentages. These percentages are based on 1, the number of answers that have been given, so the number of replies. And remember, multiple replies were allowed. So you can have more replies than you have people, which is why the n here is 40. This is about the replies that have been given. but you also have the number of people that filled it in. So a third of all the responses was Lungo, but that's all the responses. So that's taking this 40 responses as 100%. Remember, in this tiny set there were only 20 people. So if you want to know the percentage of people that actually said Lungo, you have to look at the second column, the percent of cases. So 65% of the people drink ordinary coffee. Café Lungo. So that's how you interpret this frequency table for this multiple response set. There's another possibility that you can do, and then you have to do a crosstab. But we need to compare it with something. Right now we don't have any comparison. I'll just quickly create a variable. I'll be right back. And I'm back. I added a gender variable, and I'm going to use that in the crosstab. I'm going to look at whether or not coffee drinking is influenced by gender. I can do that by going to Analyze and then Multiple Response and then Crosstabs. So I'm going to put the multiple response sets in the row, and the thing that I think is going to have an effect on that gender I'm going to put in the columns. I need to define what gender is. It's a 1 and a 2, a 1 for female and a 2 for male. Then I'll press OK. Then you get the counts. That was not really accurate. I'm going to do it again and then add percentages, because that is telling me a lot more. So here we see the comparison between women and men on which coffees they drink. Given this multiple response set data. So you can see that women are more likely to drink cappuccinos compared to men. So there's a much higher percentage of women who drink cappuccino than men. And we don't see any, for espresso it's kind of the other way around. Those are the differences that are present within this data set that you can still analyze. Remember, if you just had a bunch of words that we started out with in the beginning, you can't really deduce any of this. If you're just looking at the frequency table, you can't deduce any of this. But at the end, we can come up with a table like this, and it can tell us very interesting information. Information we might have been looking for. Good luck with creating your own multiple response set and analyzing it with frequency tables and crosstabs.